is why, with actions, not words, on the floor of the Senate last week, we reminded Rush Limbaugh and all those who think that patriotism belongs just to one political party, that just saying you support the troops doesn't make it so. You don't support the troops if you force their families to take out a collection to buy body armor for a son or daughter in the service. You don't support the troops if you deny veterans health care. And you don't support the troops in any of the ways they have through rhetoric alone. You support the troops by doing what it took a Democratic Senate to do in the last months and just last week, pass my amendment to fund the vet centers that help returning soldiers deal with PTSD. And make sure that for a generation of veterans returning home with eye injuries, their government will give them the treatment that they need. That's how you keep faith with those who wear the uniform of our country. Again and again since then, since that moment we came here to end the campaign, I have returned to this very hall to address the great issues that face our nation. In this hall, together we've talked about the need to end the war in Iraq that was rooted in deception and waged with self-deception. I argued here and in the Senate and across the country that we will be stronger when we stop a policy that has not weakened terrorism but worsened it, and when we stop helping attract al-Qaeda where it wasn't in Iraq and instead fight al-Qaeda where it plotted and planned the attacks of 9/11. And here again, we continue to fight to make America safer, not by perpetuating a broken policy for the sake of politicians' pride, but by pursuing diplomacy to end an Iraqi civil war and bring our heroes home from the wrong war in the wrong place at the wrong time. Last April, I returned here to defend the deeply American principle that dissent is not a danger, but the very safeguard of democracy. That it's right to stand up to a president who ignores the Constitution and a vice president who behaves as if he never read it. To insist that our leaders are strongest when they believe the future belongs not to fear, but to freedom. We affirm today, here, that America is strongest when we don't just tolerate free speech, but when we listen to it. I also joined you here to set out a strategy to make America energy independent, to propose specific steps. Specific steps for an energy revolution as far-reaching as the Industrial Revolution. A revolution that can not only light our land, but protect our air, our water, and our environment. A new America that relies on its ingenuity and its innovation, not the Saudi royal family. And I came here to discuss health care. The great unfinished business of half a century, a fundamental moral commitment that at long last must be kept. These are the great challenges of our time, and they deserve a president committed to meet them head on. Today, we return to Faneuil Hall. This time in keeping with this building's first and founding contribution to the American nation. This is where America's first middle class gathered. Boston merchants, mechanics, printers, and craftsmen. And they came here because they were fed up with a leader named King George, fed up with rule from an ocean away that seemed as remote as Dick Cheney's undisclosed locations do today. Rather than the rules working for them, improving their lives, they were working for the rulers. And that a distant government was doing the bidding of the powerful few, not the people who paid the taxes and played by the rules. Sound familiar? Well, I think so too. And just as we understand that it did then, It's going to take a lot more now than a tea party in order to put this country and our economy back on course. Today, we're in the middle of another revolution, a whirlwind of technological innovation that constantly shrinks our world, widens our horizons, and flattens our global competition. We've heard 1,000 times from politicians how we live in a new economy, but we remain prisoners of an old economics. Regulators that don't regulate. Politicians who say education is the key, but make educators beg for the resources to open the door. A growth in GDP, but a larger growth in inequality. A middle class steadily falling behind, and trickle-down tax cuts for the rich that left most Americans feeling as if they were trickled on. 10 years ago, we were ending a decade of sustained prosperity in which the middle-class Americans, and particularly minority Americans, made big gains in real income and wealth. Those were the Clinton years. Now